Greetings, friends. Welcome back to the Cryptodamus Astrology channel. I'm Cryptodamus here. It's been a while since we did our last video, and I wanted to give you guys a kind of a little overview forecast, the astrological factors of July that we're looking at. July is going to be a little bit different than June. June had a very favorable alignment that we talked about, the Jupiter-Saturn sextile. This is one of that was the most favorable aspect of 2023. And as I predicted, it would be very favorable for markets in the economy. And we saw a nice rally in the stock market as well as crypto going back up, Bitcoin going back up to its yearly high, and stocks really soaring through June. However, I think things are going to cool down a little bit, and we just have a more stressful, edgy month in July, and I'm going to show you exactly why. So first of all, let me go here and talk about, go to my Luna Astrology software. You guys can use Luna Astrology as well. It's a cloud-based online astrology application. If you use the code CryptoDamus, you can get a discount when you sign up. So the first event that I want to talk about in July is on July 10th, when Mars changes signs from the hot fire sign of Leo into the earthy practical sign of Virgo. Now, why this is so important is because this is going to set up the opposition between Mars and Saturn. That's going to be kind of the dominant theme, or at least one of the dominant themes of July. So that's going to start right when Mars moves into Virgo. It's going to start opposing Saturn in Pisces at 6 degrees. It's going to take about 10 days to get to the exact opposition, but that whole period it's going to be approaching. I think the overall stress and tension is going to be gradually getting more intense as we get closer to July 20th. However, before that, there's a couple of other astrological events that I do want to look at, and that's the July 17th new moon in Cancer. And this actually, I think, is a pretty good new moon. I kind of like this new moon. Let me just get it back to the right around the exact. It's going to be exact at 24 degrees Cancer. Now, one of the reasons this is a really special new moon is because the moon has dignity in its home sign of Cancer. So that's always favorable. I also like the fact that you've got a nice sextile to Uranus in Taurus, as well as a trine to Neptune in Pisces. However, you do have an opposition to Pluto in Capricorn. So even though you have a nice, exciting, high energy sextile to Uranus, that could bring some unexpected opportunities and positive events, you've got a nice kind of spiritual trine, higher spiritual consciousness trine to Neptune, but you've got an edgy, difficult opposition to Pluto. So overall, this new moon looks pretty good, again, with dignity in its home sign of Cancer. But the opposition to Pluto will bring a little edge and some tension, and certain sectors in the markets could have a rough time. We could see some sectors having a breakdown because of that opposition to Pluto. Also, on July 17th, another important event takes place, and that is that the nodal axis is going to shift signs. They've been in Taurus and Scorpio for the past 18 months or so, and with the nodal axis also goes the eclipse pattern. So the eclipses have been in Scorpio and Taurus essentially for the last year and a half, and those are slowly also going to change into Aries and Libra. So this is one of the bigger energy shifts of the year. Now, the North Node has been in Taurus and the South Node has been in Scorpio. And this is primarily been about finding that balance between stability, okay, as represented by Taurus, and embracing change as represented by Scorpio. Now, the nodal axis is going to change into Aries and Libra. And this is much more about relationships. The North Node moving into Aries, I think, is really emphasizing our need to take care of ourselves, number one. And I think the South Node, which tends to be kind of a draining influence, a weakening influence moving into Libra, could, in general, put more stress on relationships. Of course, this would depend on where this is going to fall in your chart. This means the eclipse patterns are also going to be in Aries and Libra, basically over the next year and a half. So look for a big shift here around July 17th when the nodes shift signs. Now we're going to get to July 20th. And this is where Mars at 6 degrees Virgo is going to oppose Saturn at 6 degrees of Pisces. And this is this is one of the more challenging aspects of 2023. It's an opposition of the malefics, Mars and Saturn. So you get a kind of an extra difficult energy there. I mean, it's not a huge alignment that's in effect for a long period of time. It's really going to be in effect for about a week or so, where the energy is going to be felt more strongly. Mars is about confidence and asserting yourself and getting your needs met and putting yourself out there. Mars is also about desire and getting your desires fulfilled. And Saturn, is about restrictions and limitations, difficulties, challenges, and obstacles. So when Mars and Saturn meet in the opposition, it's a very tense, high stress alignment, and it can bring a crisis in world events. It's a bit of a train wreck of an aspect. It usually indicates that we are going to have more obstacles to face, more resistance to the flow of life. Just feels like there's more obstacles and resistance, difficult, stressful, challenging circumstances in our personal lives. Again, depending on where this falls in your personal chart. Also, for the world events, this could be quite difficult. I would be looking for some crisis to unfold. Certainly places we can watch are going to be Ukraine, as we've been watching for the last year and a half. But we could see a flare-up or some type of major event take place in the war in Ukraine. Of course, the Middle East is also a place we can look to. There's been a lot more fighting and tension between Israel and the Palestinians. So that's another place. And France, there's been quite a few rebellion. There's been a big kind of rebellion and rioting in the streets across France over the last couple of weeks. So I would also look to that. It could be also some other places that could arise during this period of time as well. And this brings us to another event, which is right around that same time. There's a lot of things going on between that July 17th new moon and then July 22nd, we'll talk about Venus going retrograde. But when the nodes shift into Aries, they're going to make a square with Pluto in Capricorn when the node shifts into Aries Libra. So Pluto will be in a very special point in late July that's called in the bends or in the bending. It's going to be square the south and the north node. My friend Dan Waits he's on Twitter quite a bit, and we did the collaboration of the 2023 forecast report together. His research seems to indicate that Pluto in the bends can bring coups d'etats as well as armed rebellions and so forth like that. So that's something that we're going to be on the watch for in late July, and that also lines up with this Mars opposition to Saturn, bringing up very tense world events or some type of international crisis. So things are looking a little tense in that area of late July, in that period of late July. Now, if we go a couple of days later, we get another event, which is Venus is going to station retrograde at 28 Leo, and it's going to start about a 40-day period of going backwards through the sign of Leo. And this is also kind of challenging, right? Just like where Mercury retrograde brings difficult circumstances to the Mercury ruled issues of life, like communication and travel specifically, all sorts of technical malfunctions, especially problems with email, cell phones, car problems, travel delays, just communication breakdowns, interpersonal communication breakdowns, right? That's Mercury retrograde. So Venus retrograde brings challenges and difficulties to the areas of life that are ruled by Venus. And this is a little bit different. This has to do specifically with love and relationships, and money and wealth also being ruled by Venus. So this would be, if markets continue to rally, this would be an area where we would have to pay special attention for a major market correction, especially in August when Mercury also is going to go retrograde together with Venus. But yeah, Venus retrograde could bring, a testing period for personal relationships, especially love relationships. It's very difficult to get a new relationship off the ground during that Venus retrograde. So that might be something you want to put on the back burner. However, it can be more favorable for reuniting with an old flame or someone that you've dated, a lover or someone you've dated previously in your life, kind of coming back into your life. That can be a little bit more favorable under the Venus retrograde action. Venus also rules just like the kind of comfort in life, the good things in life. And Venus retrograde, it's a difficult period that often we have to reevaluate our goals and our values. And it can be a little bit harder to find those things. We may find that those things that generally bring us comfort, we can't access them, we don't have access to them, or they just don't work the same. So it's also a more type of stressful period when Venus goes retrograde. And I'm going to do a whole show on that one next week with a world famous astrologer, Lynn Bell, who's going to join us to give us her perspective on Venus retrograde. However, the good news is that the month actually ends with a very favorable alignment. So after Mars makes that exact opposition to Saturn, it's going to come into a nice, lively, high energy, high confidence trine with Jupiter. Let me switch this back to the days here. And that's going to really start to be felt right around the last week of July, at the end of July, especially around the 29th, 30th, 31st. Mars is going to get into 13 degrees Virgo. It's going to make a trine to Jupiter, which is going to be at 13 degrees Taurus. And I think that this could bring a rebound in global financial markets. This is a favorable aspect, one of the more favorable aspects of the summer. So I don't think that we're going to see a total breakdown in markets on the Saturn Mars opposition, because it is closely followed by that Mars Jupiter trine. So I think that month is going to end on a favorable note. However, if there is a rally in markets at the end of July on the Mars trine to Jupiter, that might be a period where we want to take some profits. If we need to have some positive cash flow, we can put some cash aside for dry powder, because I do think there is going to be a more broader based global financial correction in late August and September. As I mentioned, when Mercury and Venus both are retrograde together between August 22nd and September 3rd, that's a very unfavorable period where I'm projecting that there's going to be more difficulties in the global financial markets, including Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But for now, things look good. Now, this is going to be very special for Bitcoin in particular. And I'm going to just throw up the Bitcoin natal chart here for a minute. I'm going to show you why that is. Because in particular, this Mars trine to Jupiter, as I said, it takes place at 13 degrees of Earth, okay? So here we have the Bitcoin natal chart on the interior, and we've got Mars at 13 Virgo. It's going to be trining the Bitcoin sun, natal sun at 13 Capricorn. And it's also going to trine Jupiter at 13 Taurus. Jupiter is also going to trine the Bitcoin sun. So you've got kind of a transiting temporary grand trine in the Bitcoin chart with that very favorable Mars Jupiter trine that's going to be in a grand trine to the Bitcoin natal sun. So when you get a general favorable like Mars trine Jupiter, and it lines up with as a favorable transit pattern in the Bitcoin natal chart, that gives us a really good signal for a rally in that period. And that's, I would say that's particularly, now Jupiter's actually going to hit 13 degrees back on about July 26th. So this rally, for Bitcoin could start as early as July 26th, but certainly as we get closer to July 30th and August 1st, that's where I would definitely be looking for some big moves in the crypto markets, especially a nice rally for Bitcoin. So that's kind of my little overview of the astrology factors of July. and what we should be looking for in the markets and world events. I hope you found that interesting. By the way, guys, I am doing a special deal on astrology consultations and readings for the July and August. If you book a personal astrology reading in July and August, you'll get 10% off on my online store if you use the code DAMUS, DAMUS. I'm going to post that information in the details of this YouTube video. Thanks for joining us, and please check us out next week where we bring world famous astrologer Lynn Bell on to talk about the Venus retrograde period. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.